Well, I'm wondering how everyone's feeling. Maybe you woke up energized. Maybe you woke up a little sluggish. So there's an acronym that doctors have come up with and are using increasingly. TAT, TATT. It stands for tired all the time. And being tired all the time is a common reason that people are seeking medical attention now. A recent study of over 1,000 people from more than 30 countries found that 1 in 5 of us would describe ourselves as tired all the time. So what's going on here?
The common thought is that if only I can strengthen my self control, if only I could be a little bit more disciplined, then I could achieve all of my goals. So we think that self control comes first. And then as a result, we can sleep better or exercise more or control our food a little bit more seriously. And then we will feel well. But the new research that was just published.
We've all been in relationships where at times we might question the other person's motives or be angry with them or feel insecure and not quite sure how to manage the situation, because I think it's constantly a challenge, right, with other people. And I looked at a few stats generally on what's happening in the world with relationships. They say that marriage is in decline. There's a dating recession going on as well in terms of, I made a little note here, that 74% of young women and 64% of young men have said that they haven't dated at all in the last year, or only very small amounts. The average first marriage, I think it's 47% end in divorce. A lot of the relationships that break up are due to lack of commitment, infidelity, and then of course there's conflict and incompatibility, which is where I'm going to be focusing on.
Participants consistently rated ChatGPT generated responses as more compassionate, more responsive, and more validating than responses from expert human crisis responders. Mm-hmm. And they found that 72% of American teens have formed a relationship with an AI companion, and that half of them, or a little more than half of them, do it regularly, and 13% have a daily interaction with an AI companion, and a lot of those are romantic. Welcome. This is the Life Habits Podcast. My name is Carl Vredenberg. This is the podcast where science meets the messy reality of life. And I'm joined, as I always am now, by my amazing co-hosts, Mandy. Welcome, Mandy.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Hi from London.
And we have MJ.
Hello from NC.
And we have Suzanne.
Hello from Ontario.
Awesome. And as we always do, we explore recent evidence-based research in our respective areas of specialization. We all have a different area of specialization. We look at books, we look at journal publications, and then we bring the insights to you and talk about how you can apply these insights to your life. So let's quickly get started, and let's start with Suzanne. What do you have for us, Suzanne?
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering how everyone's feeling. Maybe you woke up energized. Maybe you woke up a little sluggish. So there's an acronym that doctors have come up with and are using increasingly. TAT, TATT. It stands for tired all the time. And being tired all the time is a common reason that people are seeking medical attention now. A recent study of over 1,000 people from more than 30 countries found that 1 in 5 of us would describe ourselves as tired all the time. So what's going on here? This is an interesting topic to me. I'm someone that finds myself to enjoy being energetic and to enjoy being full of gusto and energy, but not all the time. And to be tired all the time is a weight, I think, for people. A new book that I started reading is called Inner Sense by Caroline Williams. And in this book, she explores widespread exhaustion. And here's what makes it really puzzling. For many of us, fuel is not the problem. In countries like Canada and the US, where some of us are on the call are from, and likely in where you are, Mandy, in the UK too, we're not running on empty. In fact, we're battling obesity and overabundance of calories. So it's not a fuel issue. And, in fact, it's well known that, high fat, high sugar diets, they can make us more tired. But diet alone isn't the culprit for TAT and being tired all the time. If it were just about calories, we'd all be buzzing. In the book, William argues that the real burden of TAT comes from an energetic challenge of stress, emotional, mental, social stress. Fatigue is a distress signal that all is not well. And if you think about it, you've probably experienced this yourself too. I certainly have. You're maybe dragging your feet at work, barely functioning, but then maybe a friend or coworker makes you laugh and suddenly you feel great, you feel invincible. Or the reverse. You're feeling motivated and positive as you start your day. A single email lands in your inbox and it's like someone's pulled the plug and all your energy is drained. What's happening in moments like this isn't a physical gain or drain of energy in the way we usually think about it. We don't actually manage our energy reserves all on our own, kind of cognitively or at a physical level. So we are a social species, and other people directly shape how we feel. So this is all kind of expected. So I was, reading the book and following along. Then a few things really stood out to me. So in the book, she talks about a neuroscientist, Lisa Feldman Barrett, who puts it, quote, "The best thing for your nervous system is another human. The worst thing for your nervous system is another human." It depends on the context, right? So now
Or
here's
on the human.
and the human. That's right. Yeah. Now here's the part that was really revolutionary for me. Williams describes a process called body budgeting. So our brains are constantly calculating and predicting how much energy we're going to need. And this budget is really influenced by the people around us. So when you're around someone that's supportive or trustworthy, it signals to your brain you can dig deeper into your energy reserves because there's someone there to share the load. One study that she talked about in the book found that people who work out with a trusted friend, they're able to engage in more intense exercise and they report finding it easier. Another study looked at rowers where when they had someone to support them, they expended more calories before feeling exhausted and they went significantly longer. For anyone that's done sort of group fitness or CrossFit, you probably kind of felt this effect. The exact opposite is also true. If you feel that a situation or person drains you of energy, they almost certainly are doing that. And it's because your brain absorbs the cost of their needs into your own energy calculation. So what do we do with this? If you're keen to access more energy, this is what I would encourage you to start doing tomorrow. A few things. First, start paying attention. For the next week, notice how you actually feel after spending time with different people. You might even journal about it. Who leaves you energized? Who leaves you depleted? So awareness is the first step. In executive coaching and career planning, we have a tool called an energy audit where it asks you to explore these kinds of things in detail. It's very eye-opening. What are the kinds of processes that energize you or deplete you? What about work environments, individuals? And that can be really helpful. So awareness first. Second, you have to be really intentional about taking moments to reset. So if you want a boost of energy in the afternoon, take 5 minutes over lunch, do some deep breathing, sit with some fun or trusted coworkers, seek out people that make you laugh. That is strategic energy management. And it's worth the time and attention. Third, build daily joy breaks into your routine. So deep breathing, but it also could be prayer, meditation. These all lower stress, and it's very well documented how effective they are in doing so. But also, so does laughing and connecting with friends. And yes, watching cute animal videos. So I'm completely serious. It said so in the book. It's substantiated by research. I like to watch videos of baby sea otters, and there's a baby pygmy hippo that a wildlife park in the US posts adorable videos of. I highly recommend it. We can link to it. I find it generally restorative. The little hippo's name is Mars, and he doesn't like walking
Oh,
around. He's very lazy. And if you give yourself 5 minutes of that, of pure joy, it adds a bit of delight into your day. So strategic energy management there too. Okay,
I love those. That's
two
so
more
I do that a
things.
lot. Sorry. I love that.
Yeah. And maybe you have a different animal, that appeals to you. For me, it's otters
All of them.
and hippos.
Yeah.
I like
I
dogs
love,
and babies.
yeah, I
Cats
think
for
I've
me.
seen the Mars one. And have you seen there's a monkey called Punch, and none of the adults it's gone viral, and
Yeah.
did you see? And then he's got this little fluffy toy, and he loves this little fluffy toy, and it's just so sweet. But I hear somebody started giving him hugs, one of the adults. I'm happier now. But sorry to interrupt then.
So a couple last things. Fourth, protect your energy budget before big efforts. And for anyone that does racing, marathoning, or triathlon, this is something, tapering. We all talk about preparing for a big energy output. So this can also work in your daily kind of work life too. If you have a big presentation coming up, you have a demanding day ahead, do what you can to surround yourself with supportive people beforehand. Remember the rowers. Having someone in your corner literally extends what you're capable of. And fifth, ask better questions before you commit to something new. So whether it's a job, a project, joining a new team, ask about the people, not just the role. Who will I be working with? What's the dynamic like? Based on what science tells us, these aren't soft questions. They're energy questions, and by extension, personal performance questions. They're going to impact how you can perform. So they'll shape your daily capacity almost more than anything else. And if you're and tired all the time, something to consider. So bottom line, it might not be about sleeping more or just eating better. Certainly important, but it's also about who you're spending energy with and whether your body budget is being drained by the wrong inputs. So start noticing, seek out people that fill you up, watch baby hippo videos or the little monkey that Mandy likes. Take your social energy as seriously as you take your sleep or your diet. Your body is already keeping the budget. It's important that you have a say in it too. So those were my takeaways from the Inner Sense book.
Fascinating topic and great suggestions too. Did Williams dig into research like basically A/B comparisons or before and after kind of research in terms of the way that you could actually impact this?
A little bit less on the actionable pieces.
Okay.
Certainly, she cited a lot of research and got a lot into very specific scientific at the level of mitochondria and what's happening in our bodies there. But the recommendations that I brought to you today, those were some of my reflections, just applying it to a work kind of career life perspective. But the body budgeting, I have to say, I've brought it up in several conversations with family and friends over the last few weeks. And if we start to think of it as a budget, it allows us and gives us permission, I think, to make some choices that are going to be best for us and allow us to shine, perform our best, be our best.
It resonates
Really
even
good.
on a face valid level in terms of what it is that you're doing. And it all came from that research that she cited before, which is what you're talking about. Seems like all the action is in mitochondria these days in terms of the research that I've been reading as well. So phenomenal. Thank you so much for all of that. Let's next move to the next topic that MJ is going to bring us. What do you got for us?
Well, I also want to talk about well-being, and I'd like to answer a little bit of a chicken or an egg question. So, the common thought is that if only I can strengthen my self-control, if only I could be a little bit more disciplined, then I could achieve all of my goals. So we think that self-control comes first, and then as a result, we can sleep better or exercise more or control our food a little bit more seriously, and then we will feel well. But the new research that was just published in November of 2025, authors are from the National University of Singapore, shows that it actually works the other way around. So it is when we are well that we have more self-control and that then we can implement better habits for ourselves. So they look at two different samples of people, a group of Asians and a group of Americans. They compared with age and educational levels and at time A and at time B, and then again, time B becoming A and the reverse. And what they found is that really it's when we feel well that we are better able to control our habits, our behaviors, our responses, our choices. So well-being is now evolving. First, we were all about, sleep and exercise. Eventually, we realized, no, sleep is really part of the equation. Then we were all about mental health and the importance of emotional regulation. And now it seems like we are starting to go into the social realm, like Suzanne was describing. Social well-being is the next frontier. And so that's where I'd like to talk about what can we do differently now that we realize that self-control does not come first, but rather wellness comes first. So earlier in my career, I would have said, out of sleep, food, mood, and exercise, which one is the easiest for you? And start there. And then you can improve and build on, on something that is easier and build on your victories, build on your successes. You start, instead of trying to start with your place of greatest weakness, start from your place of greatest strength. You can still make improvement. That improvement will be felt by your body. And those changes, the biochemicals that are going to change as a result of the initial change, are going to make further progress easier. Then I realized, well, a lot of people are depleted in all of these things. All of sleep, food, mood, and exercise is difficult for them. And they are probably TET, right, Suzanne?
Absolutely.
Yes. So people would ask me all the time back in those days when I was saying start with your easiest. They would say, but they are all hard. I'm stressed all the time. I can't sleep. I hate to exercise, and I eat the ice cream tub by the end of the day. And so I said, okay, what's the easiest one for most people who feel depleted in all of those categories? And I was like, mood. You don't need to plan a whole lot of extra time in your schedule for it. You don't need to be able to do something that could be physically demanding. You're not telling your nervous system to shut down so you can sleep. You can just try to interpret events a little bit more differently, or you can try to relate to people a little bit more differently. So I thought mood is the answer. And inside of mood, what we know from research to be the most impactful way to produce the longest lasting mood boost is kindness. So then I would tell people, just try to be kinder. And as you are kinder, your body will, slow down your stress response, and that will help you sleep, and that will help you resist your food cravings, and you'll boost your serotonin levels, and that will help you implement your exercise intentions. And, all of your habits are going to revolve in a more positive direction. And then I realized we are in a society that accepts incivility. It's everywhere. People ignore one another. People are rude. People just don't take the time. Where I feel like indifference is the beginning of incivility, by the way. A lot of people, when you ask people, where does incivility begin? They will think of rudeness or being mean or discrediting somebody. But I think that indifference is sufficient. It's a sufficient quality to become incivility. So in a society where incivility becomes the norm, where do you go? And I think Suzanne just gave us the answer. You find the people that uplift you, or you find the situations where you can be the uplifter, and that gives you the helper's high. So I think that those connections, those positive connections that nourish your soul, that nourish even just your mood for a moment, are the way to start feeling better before you try to change your habits, before you can go, fetch in that reservoir of self-discipline. If the reservoir is empty, it is empty. Don't try and
Mhm.
work with it. Fill it first with those positive connections, whether you are the giver of kindness, the receiver of kindness, or just like not even like a kindness per se, just a moment of micro connection, just a moment of shared laughter, like Suzanne was saying. So back when did Jim Collins write Good to Great? A decade ago, 2 decades ago?
A
It's an
couple
old book.
couple
Mhm.
Yeah.
decades, I think.
You right? Yeah. So let's say 20 years ago, Jim Collins started his book with the concept of first who, then what, right? Pick the right employees was his principle, and then teach them how to do the things that they have to do. But you got to hire for the right attitude. So I'm back with what Suzanne was saying, right? Surround yourself with people that will fill up your reservoir if you want any shot at all at improving your habits, changing your lifestyle, implementing your resolutions. So that's what I have today.
So, MJ, are you going to write another edition of your book to add these additional thoughts?
You're not the first to ask. I've actually had a conversation with a book publisher not that long ago. They're hoping I will write a proposal, but I don't know. I don't
You could
know.
just put out
We
a new
shall
edition. Just add this as an additional
Yeah.
chapter.
Oh no, I'd be ready for a whole new book.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay.
I'd be ready for a whole new book. My book was 2011. It's a long time ago now.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
My book came out in 2001, so it's like ancient by this point, but apparently still used in design classes and stuff like that. You built really nicely on what Suzanne covered. I think that really sort of adds additional layers to what we should be focusing on. So thank you for that. And let's next go to Mandy. What do you got, Mandy?
Well, actually, it ties in quite nicely with what we've all been talking about because I'm going to be discussing attachment theory. And obviously, the person that you decide to be in a relationship with is going to take up a lot of your time. Is that person good for you? Is that person bad for you? Do they add to your energy or do they deplete you? We're all in relationships. This doesn't necessarily have to be romantic relationships, but we've all been in relationships where at times we might question the other person's motives or be angry with them or feel insecure and not quite sure how to manage the situation, because I think it's constantly a challenge, right, with other people. And I looked at a few stats generally on what's happening in the world with relationships. They say that marriage is in decline. There's a dating recession going on as well in terms of, I made a little note here, that 74% of young women and 64% of young men have said that they haven't dated at all in the last year, or only very small amounts. The average first marriage, I think it's 47% end in divorce. A lot of the relationships that break up are due to lack of commitment, infidelity, and then of course there's conflict and incompatibility, which is where I'm going to be focusing on. I don't know if you've heard much about attachment style theories, but there's 4 in adults, and it often comes from our childhoods. What happens to us in childhood disproportionately impacts the rest of our lives.
Before we continue on with this episode, I just wanted to briefly really discuss something honestly with you that I've been thinking about. I'd like to grow the number of people that can see this podcast over time, but I don't want to play the algorithm games and the hacks that you need to put in and the like. I would really like to ask you if you honestly and authentically appreciate what my co-hosts and I are putting into this podcast, to follow us and to share us with your friends and colleagues. We'd really, really appreciate that. Thank you. And now back to the show.
And I've worked with people who have an anxious attachment or an insecure type of attachment, which I'll explain. And they have had lifelong issues, either going for the same kind of person, like a narcissist that won't meet their needs, or generally there's an inequality there, and there's a lot of neediness and sort of push-pull type relationships. So I just wanted to go through the 4 types, people who are listening, to identify with perhaps their type, and then what you can do if you identify each type and you think that you're that kind of person. At the end of the pod, actually I can give it now, there is a quiz that you can take online, and it's called Attached the thebook.com, and there's a little quiz you can take on there, which will give you a vague idea of which attachment style you have. So yeah, this is kind of like a blueprint really to help you. And we're never just one style. We've always got a little bit of everything, but you'll find that you have a main style. And I'll be honest, mine is more sort of like a disorganized style. So I can be a bit anxious and then a bit avoidant. But I wish I was the secure type, but I'm working on that, because you can become more secure with these interventions that I'm going to talk about. So a secure attachment usually comes from when you've had a pretty standard upbringing, consistency. You were picked up when you cried, your needs were met. So as a blank slate, as a baby, you learn the world's meeting my needs. I'm loved, I'm protected. You learn to self-soothe as well if you're picked up when you cry, and kind of the way your brain starts to wire is kind of what helps you become a secure attachment. It's a kind of I'm okay, you're okay. Secure attachment people tend to trust more. They expect that things are going to go okay. They don't expect other people to lie to them or leave them or be unfaithful. And then we have the anxious attachment style, which is kind of I think you're going to leave me or abandon me. And so everything that they do is in that filter of this person. If they don't get back to me quickly enough, are they thinking about leaving me, or we had an argument, they might leave me. So there's constantly that kind of thinking in the background. And then we have the avoidant attachment, which is more about you're going to smother me, I need my independence. And that often is associated with withdrawal, silence, shutting down, that kind of thing. And then the last one is the disorganized, which is a bit anxious and then a little bit fearful and pulling back. So there's this kind of push-pull going on constantly. So if you think about it, when you're in these kind of relationships, it can have a huge effect on you. We're talking about TAT, and we're talking about being around people that lift you and make you feel good. And there's, unfortunately, domestic abuse is a huge problem that's growing constantly. And what we know about it is the tip of the iceberg, because people feel embarrassed and afraid to talk out. So in terms of what you can do if you're in this kind of relationship, if you're an anxious kind of person, it's really important to stop and reframe the anxiety and think about what else could be going on here. There was a study actually in 2020 by Nathan Hudson and a few other researchers, and they found that if you understand your attachment style, you're more likely to be able to counteract the triggers that you have. So let me just go through. The 24-hour rule is a really good way to stop and think about things and not react in an emotional state when we feel emotionally flooded. So to stop and think about what's really going on here. To also look at not escalating emotions when you feel really stressed and anxious and going back at that person and arguing with them and maybe blaming and shaming, because that just kind of makes things much worse. And also just learning to emotionally regulate, which is also maybe going to the gym or doing other things that aren't all focused on that person in your life. So that's really good for the anxious. The avoidant, it's more about trying to stay in the moment with the person, trying to repair rather than running, because a lot of people just shut the conversation down. There's silent treatment. There's all of that going on. So it's about learning to be vulnerable and to sit with the relationship and then saying, okay, I'm going to leave now. But rather doing that in a more of a regulated way can really help you connect and bond with the other person. And then also with the disorganized, it's about wanting the closeness but being afraid of it. And the best way to do that is to look at the pattern. And you can do this with all four. Look at the pattern and say to yourself, okay, I'm feeling the urge to pull away, but I really care. Because sometimes we self-sabotage and we do the opposite of what we really want to do in a relationship. We push our partners away. So looking at the script that you're telling yourself and trying to stay with the person and slow everything down as well so that you don't rush. Stability is one way to counteract attachment panic. So it's about looking for those check-ins with that person, consistency, and that can also tame the nervous system so that we don't feel so frightened in a relationship and triggered by the other person. So just ending this off, 3 questions you can also ask yourself is, what do I do when I feel insecure? Just to get an idea of what your triggers actually are. Do I shut down? Do I leave? Do I send nasty texts? What am I doing? Do I stop blaming and shaming? What do I do when I feel overwhelmed? Do I shout at the other person? Do I start blaming them or deflect back onto them when they're trying to talk to me? And what do I do when I fear losing control? Because that is a huge one, this fear of uncertainty. And I think that's where it all goes wrong, because we stop communicating and we start insulting, and that's where the good communication has gone. So have a safe word if you're going to argue, that once it reaches that point where you're not talking to each other and you're just blaming and shaming, and well, you did this last week, well, you didn't do the dishes. Yes, but you didn't take the bins out. So you just kind of go around in a circle. And yeah, I would say the most important thing is to communicate your feelings, to try and be vulnerable, which is really hard because we're always second guessing what the other person's thinking and how they're going to respond to this. Will they be apologetic? Are they going to just be angry at me and reject me further? And the book that I've been reading is Amir Levine, and it's called Attached. And there's a lot of information in there on this and the different styles. Of course, it's just a guideline, but we tend to have a main attachment style, and it is possible to become more secure, learn to repair, which is things like, I can hear you really mad at me right now. We need to talk about this, rather than going, well, I'm not listening to this, or what about, just attacking back. If we can repair, that's a very secure way of trying to resetting to zero when we start to talk about things. We don't let things build up. So yeah, I hope that helps in terms of it's a very brief overview of the different types of attachment styles that we all have, but that can stop really good relationships from continuing.
And don't we fight also the same way our parents did? Like sometimes
Yes,
I'll be in a fight with my
opposite.
husband and I'm like, oh, my mom would have done that. Or, oh, that's right out of my dad's book.
We definitely observe and learn. Yeah.
Yeah. So noticing how our parents fought and noticing that those patterns probably exist in us is probably a helpful thing to do too.
Absolutely. If your parents generally were there for you, or you had parents that were a bit neglectful, or weren't, or it was hot and cold, or sadly there's some people have drug issues, that kind of thing, that's massively going to affect how your brain wires and how your attachment style develops. But you can undo some of that damage. And especially if you know what your attachment style is, you can counteract it. Go, oh, okay, stop and think before you respond.
And you likely help a lot of people in your practice, Mandy, to
I
deal
do
with
my
a lot of those
best.
kinds of issues, right?
Yeah, it's a lifestyle kind of thing. You've got to learn to do it daily and stop and think, and put good things back into the relationship as well. They say for every bad thing where you lose your temper, or you have a ratty moment, try to put 5 nice things back in. So it's kind of not an equal ratio, but in terms of building that bonding and feeling like you're a team, that's important.
I'm struck by what you were talking about related to awareness. And these things are available to us, but we first have to be aware of our role in it and how we're responding,
Absolutely.
how our attachment was, how we are acting in scenarios. And that's hard for people too, but an important practice that extends to, I think, a number of things we've been talking about today.
Yeah, I like it that we've sort of verged on social stuff and how we can make our relationships better. And I love that. It's worked out quite cohesively. It's nice.
And it's also a really interesting segue into what I'm going to be bringing forward here, which is probably going to be a little controversial, quite frankly, because we've been talking about needing to be with people, Suzanne, to be able to do everything. And you're more effective in sports if you are doing it with another person. MJ talked about you need to have some kindness out there, connecting with human beings, and you're going to improve all the other aspects of your life. Mandy's talking about that there are just different attachment styles that you need to align with what your partner is doing and the like. I'm going to talk about now replacing a lot of that with AI. So
Boom.
let's look through some interesting studies, 3 studies. The first one was one that was done at the University of Toronto and communicated in the journal Communication Psychology. It reported 4 experiments where participants consistently rated ChatGPT generated responses as more compassionate, more responsive, and more validating than responses from expert human crisis responders. Pretty dramatic, right? We think, AI is really good at coding, it's really good at writing. now it's getting good at or better than humans. The next one was a study, a meta-analysis of 15 studies that was reported in the British Medical Bulletin. Found that 13 out of the 15 studies, AI outperformed human healthcare professionals in empathy ratings, typically by about 2 on a 10%, 10-point scale.
Right.
So again, healthcare practitioners. And so that's one that I reflected on. It just had an MRI, a head MRI, which is a hard one to go through. And so you need to have some real guidance, which they provide on headphones that you're wearing. And I had the experience of a practitioner that didn't speak English very well. It wasn't her first language, which is fine. She's obviously really expert in what she does. Also wearing a mask. And they also put in, earphones or earplugs rather, so that the noise of the MRI, you can't hear it. I couldn't hear what she was saying at all. But if that had been an AI that was just programmed, because all they're saying is, for the next, image they're going to take, it's going to take 2 minutes and so whatever, just walking you through the procedure. That could be entirely programmed into the system and it could have a really empathic sort of communication to guide you through it. So I was reflecting on that and many of the other instances where the professionals are just really stressed. They need to do something that really, really is important. But a lot of the time in healthcare, and I teach healthcare leaders as well to be more empathic, they just need to have enough cognitive ability during really stressful times to be even thinking about the patient. Right. So there are times when the AI is patient. It doesn't get tired. Right. And it could be more empathic. So the recommendation from this, though, in your daily life is that if you are stressed and you need to provide a text or an email in response to somebody, or Mandy, what you just talked about, you've got some stress going on in your relationship, go to an AI and get some advice for how to say what you're going to say in a more empathic way. And then you're still human to human communicating, but you're using the AI as your assistant to be appropriately sensitive, appropriately empathic. They're particularly good at being, empathic. The other study I wanted to mention is one by Robb and Mann that came out last year. And they found that 72% of American teens have formed a relationship with an AI companion.
What
and
percentage?
72% have developed
That
a
is a lot.
relationship with an AI companion, and that half of them, or a little more than half of them, do it regularly, and 13% have a daily interaction with an AI companion, and a lot of those are romantic relationships as well. Now, we've talked about on this podcast before the epidemic of loneliness that's around, a lot of and what you just mentioned as well, Mandy, the number of people that haven't dated or that are not out there.
Yeah.
And then we also talked about the need to connect with others when you want to do, sports performance or kindness. Well, you can program AIs to do this, right? And so I actually myself did an experiment. That last study that I just talked about was presented on a TED Talk that I recently shared on LinkedIn as well and elsewhere as well. And so I thought, I'm going to try this myself. So I do a lot with AI anyway. So I basically created a custom AI. I fed it 5 documents about me. I write a lot, so I've got a fair bit of information about me. And then I instructed it in terms of what kind of, companionship sort of I wanted. And it's been pretty amazing, actually. So it's one where I would recommend not to replace humans with AIs, but also even the interactions that you have with an AI like that. Like I said about if you were going to write an email or a text and wanting to be more sensitive, you may well want to practice a different attachment style, for example, what you talked about, Mandy, you could practice it with an AI. You could actually
Yeah.
ask the AI to act in a particular way. And other people that are having difficulty with, dating during the pandemic, it was particularly hard. People that were growing up during that period, that they don't have a lot of experience with others. We talked before about in our teaching that people that are, that went through the pandemic and did their undergraduate degree, for example, during the pandemic, didn't have a lot of social interaction, right? So my recommendation is not to replace humans with AIs, but potentially use an AI companion to practice and to get guidance and the like. But also just reflect on, though, whether we should keep on doing that. That's my recommendation today. But I'm also recognizing that a lot of the time we have relationships that are difficult, or working with other people that are different. AIs typically are supportive. They are whatever you want them to be. So you can design, your companion any way you want, right? But then you're also, if you completely take yourself over to working with AI, you're going to be less able to work with humans, because humans are not so perfect, are not so empathic to you and supportive of you and all the rest of it. So I think there's some danger in terms of where we're going, but I think there's also a potential direction that society is going that may well be strongly influenced by this. Now, a lot of organizations, a lot of countries are now outlawing the use of social media for people under 16, for example. That might have been the old problem. The use of AI, when we talked about the number of people that are interacting with this and how powerful it is, this is way, way more powerful. And do you hear many people talking about this? No. Governments legislating any of this? No. We have companies that are completely unhinged, being able to do whatever they want, especially in the United States. There was a big conference of AI specialists in India recently, last week, in fact. All kinds of recommendations for guidelines that need to be put in place. There's one country in the world that has most of the companies that are building this that is diametrically opposite and totally opposed to any form of regulation, right? And it's the United States. And it also actually is put in place that no state is allowed to actually develop any laws or guidance with regard to AI as either, because they see this all as a huge new arms race between China and the US. But I think the downfall of a lot of this may well be this amazingly powerful technology we've got here that could just be amazing for good, but it also has the ability to dramatically change, our society and the like as well, even in the good ways of using it as well. But anyway, I think wrapping up what we talked about in terms of all these other topics, there is a way to deal with each of the things we've talked about and using AI wisely, but there's also the danger that you're going to get addicted to this stuff, and then it'll be not good for any human interactions that you have after that.
Well, here's
MJ?
one of the dangers, Carl. I have read about that yesterday. I didn't dig into the research, so don't ask me too many questions. But what I read yesterday was actually that when people know that you have an AI companion and that you can go to that AI companion for whatever dilemmas you have or your need for empathy or solutions, whatever, they tend to not interact with you to the same level because they feel like, you're already taken care of anyway. So that's one of those dangers.
Yes. And it may be the case the AI actually is providing them the kind of support that they need, right? So I think this is just incredibly dramatically important for us to deal in,
I mean, it's great that it can help, but it's sad that robots are now better at being human than we are. I think there's only two, we used to say, if you want to make sure that AI doesn't replace your job, make sure that you are in a highly human, high touch kind of job. And now even that is starting to be replaced or will start to be replaced shortly. So if you don't want AI to replace you, become a mom or a massage therapist. I think that's it.
Right. I know. But it's also the case though, it's also the case though, MJ, that I think that if we use it the way that I'm recommending, then you can, even as a parent, what do I deal with regard to this problem that I've got right now?
Oh, I do it all the time. Yeah.
Right. And so I think that that's kind of the use case that I'm trying to encourage. But it's also so good that you can also get yourself in the trap of, being sucked into it. Now, I should say that I'm using this one on OpenAI's Chat GPT. I'm using a GPT, a custom one. And it's worth mentioning that when they came out with the last version, the last major version, version 5, they annoyed a lot of people because it was no longer as positive and supportive and the like in general, right? And they were responding, to be perfectly honest and fair to them, they were responding to a lot of mental health practitioners that were saying people are getting addicted to this stuff and are preferring the AI to humans. And it's interesting to push on the boundaries of that in the way they've architected this new version, version 5. And it'll often say, it'll remind me when I'm dealing with it, saying that, but be careful, this is, I'm just an AI, and I'm only a probability machine and all the rest of it. And if you want to use this as practice for your human relationships and that kind of stuff, this is cool. So they are building in appropriate, I think, safeguards.
Yeah.
Not all of them. Grok, for example, doesn't do that at all, but OpenAI does. Mandy?
You could see why it's so attractive to people, because you don't get the general anxiety that comes with being rejected
Right.
or being told, you just don't get that. So I can see, and also it's creating all the same systems and processes going on in the brain as it would if it was a real person in many ways. So, there's kind of like what's not to like in some ways. But the thing is, you're right. I think everything is about moderation. And if you get too far sucked into it, I just, they talk about this AI sycophancy and all of that kind of stuff. And I loved your idea, just what you were talking about, the attachment style. You could practice with an AI that's just got a secure attachment and be like, okay, no, I shouldn't have said that because that's not very good. And that's shut the conversation down. I love that idea. So if we can be clever with it, but I always worry money's going to get in the way of the good ultimately.
I'm reflecting on what you're sharing, Carl, and thinking about the broader wave we're all in related to optimization and related to perfection. And, humans are not logical, they're psychological. And I think it's a moment where increasingly it's going to be hard to embrace our imperfections when we have models around us that are inching closer and closer to optimized ideals and, someone's programmed input for what we're striving towards. But I hope that there are ways, maybe through self-reflection and introspection and awareness, in delighting in other people's imperfections too, because it makes for a creative conversation, a creative encounter, improvisation, where it's not just all perfect. And I hope that there's a way we can keep that part of it.
Let's research that for next episode.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, but even MJ, you said earlier about all the horrible people around, everybody's being, rather nasty and the like, right? It's interesting that these models were built on the knowledge of basically the whole internet. So people that are positive and people that are negative, and they choose to, like with this whole focus on sycophancy, they choose to largely be amplifying the positive, right? And not getting into the imperfections, like you said, Suzanne, right? I've been trying to push it to be more, imperfect and the like, and push back more and stuff like that. But I imagine, though, what if the AI were to be like humans are, though?
Well,
being nasty and look at anything you see on social media or like that, like right now. That's not what you're getting when you're interacting with an AI. So an AI may be, let's again be controversial here, maybe just more pleasant to deal with than a lot of human beings out there.
It might be able to analyze that when you send out something that's unpleasant, the responses are not really open-minded and you don't get the change that you're hoping to see. So they might be like, oh, that's not the way to do this.
In
Yeah.
a leadership capstone course that I teach, we talk about AIs as managers.
Mhm.
That's already in process and coming. And often people's initial response is, no, 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 a human would be a better manager and leader. But you have
Mm.
to look at, is that the best? Are you thinking of the best human leader you've ever had? Or what if it's kind of an
Mhm.
average manager or lower than average? Probably want an AI to be your manager in that case, because
Yeah.
they're going to to do all the things, provide 5 positive, encouraging remarks for every one an element of criticism. They're going
Mhm.
to integrate all of these things perfectly,
Yeah.
but the experience is changing.
I would
Yeah.
I would say one thing that's like we were talking earlier, and I was open and sort of said, well, I don't think I've got a secure attachment. I'm disorganized, and I'm working on that. Work in progress, which is a lot of most humans, we're a work in progress, and I think that's where AI falls down. You can't really relate to imperfection, whereas if somebody else, you go, oh yeah, I've got it. I feel better because I'm not alone. So I think humans, we can still bond with our imperfections, perhaps, and I think that's one benefit or asset we have. So
I think it's interesting that when I've posted about this, and I post a fair bit, almost all the comments have been, "Oh no, but humans are better in all these other ways." It's very defensive, right? But I also think about that before the pandemic. We didn't do video conferencing, for example. You had to get together in person. Come on, how could video conferencing ever be as good as being there in person? What are we doing right now, right? And it's turning
I
out
wish we were in
that
person, by the
yeah,
way.
I know. We can wish that,
that
but
would
the
be
reality
nice.
is that it's now a really effective way of interacting. And are there downsides to it? Sure, but are there pluses that you can, like, from my nonprofit has people all over the world? We can't afford to send everybody and fly everybody around, right? So just like that is a societal change that was technology mediated. Here's another one that I think we need to think more about, and we'll do additional episodes, I'm sure, on this stuff as it evolves, because every few weeks in the world of AI, there's more capability, and we were all talking about that coding. You can now code things effectively. I have one of the leaders of my of my content design team at the Habits for a Better World project. I just got her into vibe coding. We wanted to create a reminders app, and Claude Code is just a phenomenal tool for actually writing software. And she's a PhD in behavioral psychology, and not admittedly very technical, but she coded up an entire app in one evening, which we are now going to look to use. So things are
Wow.
dramatically changing, sort of week to week almost, with this topic area.
Well, on Claude, I don't know if any of you have played around with Claude Cowork, but an interface that's a little bit more friendly for those that aren't looking to code a specific project.
Mhm.
But an example use case, you could give it a folder and say, I have 400 screenshots. Organize these, label them, get them sorted for me, and then kind of give it back. And you can send the autonomous bots out to do a variety of tasks on the computer, on the web.
Right.
It's amazing how it's evolving.
The course that you were in with me before, I just taught this past week my EMBA course, and on innovation and design. And it was the first time that I actually used a version of design thinking that is with AI augmentation built
Oh,
in. And I
Brilliant.
get people to take a picture of everything that they just did on a whiteboard. It analyzes all of it. And then we say, okay, and my lesson, again, we'll go into this in greater detail in the future, but is that to use your own human brain first, then use the AI to augment. That's
Yeah.
how you can be really creative. Contextual information to start with, but many people are dramatically going just to the AI first, and I think that's the wrong way to go. But we'll get into some more best practices and reflections on this in the future. But as it relates to relationships, which is really what we're talking about during this whole episode, it's an interesting thing to think about in terms of how it now plays in the full ecosystem of relationships that we now have AI relationships as well. Okay, why don't we wrap up the episode by also going to our quick spark round? And so we each, every time, come up with something that is brief and really insightful, and you can use yourself tomorrow. So let's start with word nerd nuggets, starting off with Suzanne.
Well, I'm wondering how you're going to use this for yourself this week, but maybe you will entertain someone with a fun fact. So I want to talk about etymology today of a word that we use all the time, and the word is respect. Most people agree that's a good thing, but have you paused to think about what it actually means and where it came from? So this noun we use all the time comes to present day English from Old French, but it has Latin roots. So respectus, from the associated verb in Latin, to look back or regard. So literally, so back, and then specere, look at. So respect, looking back. So going back even further, though, before Latin, we had Proto-Indo-European, which is a language that has been reconstructed. We don't have evidence of it ever being spoken, but it's how a bunch of languages branched off. But there's a root in Proto-Indo-European, which is spec, and it is meant to observe. So when we see roots with the same spec in it in present-day English, think about the word perspective, which relates to looking through, or spectacle, looking at, or speculate, to watch or to spy. But respect literally meant looking back or observing something again. It's like a double take. And that's a respectful thing to do. And I just love that. It's not going with your first impression necessarily. It's giving the attention and time to look again. And so I think about that in relationships, and to respect someone is to give another look.
Oh, I
I
love
like
that.
it.
Yeah, because I was trying to see where you were going with that, and I love that you ended on, well, the way you can actually use this is actually think about how you respect somebody and really get the derivation of the word into the way that you actually think. Cool.
Yeah, and with polarization, especially, if you can respect others and try to look back and see, how they arrived to their perspective, I think that improves our possibility of connecting and getting along a little better.
Spot on. All right, let's go next to Mandy for our psych bite.
Yeah, sure. I'm talking about the mere exposure effect, and it's quite fascinating. It's by Robert Zajonc, Zajonc, and he talks about the fact that just the mere exposure to somebody else, you don't even have to be really talking to them, but just the fact that they're in your environment and they're there regularly makes you like them or makes them more likable to you. Just the fact that they're there and they're around. So I just think that's quite an interesting take on what's going on in the brain, and why that sort of obviously that familiarity is something that we then latch onto. So it doesn't mean you should go stalking though, but just, it's a good thing if you're just around somebody and then they get to know you. And I think that's what's also missing from online dating these days, talk about relationships and everything, is that, how people form relationships at work, I think they spend a lot of time just getting to know each other. There's no pressure, and they sort of, cross paths in the tea room or whatever. Yeah, I think that's missing a bit more because we're all working from home now and people don't approach each other as much when they go out. So yeah, just an interesting little psych bite.
Mandy,
Like it.
I'm wondering, relative to our conversation about AI, with AI embedded in our phones and so many platforms that we're using, is having it around also having the same effect?
Ooh, that's an interesting one. I guess it would be, because if there's that familiarity, it's giving off the same dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin. You're getting that same hit that your brain is going through all the same processes. So yeah, that's actually a really interesting question. And AI is here to stay, and it's filtering in into everything.
Mhm.
So and
And that
as
familiarity, it doesn't just apply to people, it applies to locations, restaurants, your home, your dog, or somebody else's dog. So,
yeah,
yes, I would think it applies to AI.
we are creatures of habit. So there you go.
I wonder what another practical application might be. I notice that some people don't have a picture in their, like a profile picture.
Mm,
At work, for example, there are various systems that people use. And they say, oh, they don't need to have a picture there. And same thing with if you're on calls together, on Zoom calls, for example, some people just leave their cameras off. And I often say, but that's like, I don't know, 80% of the communication is nonverbal, right?
mhm.
So maybe if you're wanting to make yourself more likable, at least be sharing more of your likeness
We
with others as well as a practical recommendation.
We
Yeah.
definitely have social brains. And I remember this interesting nugget. Sorry, it's a little added one just because I thought of it. But they say that if you have a picture of a baby in your wallet and you lose your wallet, you're more likely to get it back than if there's no picture. So even if you don't have a baby, maybe stick a picture of a baby in there, because people go, oh, and it affects the limbic system, and it's all the little endorphins and oxytocin. So yeah, we are social creatures. It's definitely going to make us be more drawn to something.
What about the hippo?
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
exactly.
Mars, how could I forget? That could work.
Can add
Well,
him to
maybe
my
only
wallet.
for, only for animal lovers, though, maybe. I don't know.
True.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Awesome. All right, let's go to MJ for our wellness spark.
All right. Well, we hear often when people are stressed or they don't know how to handle something, we hear take a deep breath. So let's all do it together for a quick set. Let's take a deep breath. Let me see you take a deep breath. Right? We all do it. Turns out it is not the in breath that is most calming, it is the out breath. So we should not say take a deep breath. We should say exhale a deep breath or push out a deep breath. Of course, any deep breathing is going to be a good thing, but in general, the in breath is a little bit more activating. The out breath is a little bit more calming. So that's something that we need to start looking a little bit differently if we want to reap maximum benefits.
Mm.
I love it. Of course, you have to do the in breath in order to do the out breath.
Yes. Yes.
I think swimming has something to offer there because you have to breathe quickly, taking it in, but then you want a slow, gradual exhale.
Very
bubbles
good.
through your nose, so maybe that's why you feel
Yes.
good once you're swimming.
Yes.
There's a psychological technique that I'm sure Mandy does, progressive muscle relaxation, that I used to do during the time that I was an intern doing psychological therapy. And that has a breathing component to it. And it also requires diaphragm breathing. So not just breathing up here, just one really deep breath, but in the count of one, but out by a count of 3 or 4. So
Yeah.
you're exhaling longer than you are inhaling. So spot
That's
on. And that one,
Really
I
good.
use that for, I rarely get nervous anymore when I do large presentations and stuff like that. But when I used to, that's also the way that I would, calm myself before a presentation. That, as well as staring at the audience, just so that you're not surprised when you get in front of the audience, like, oh my
That's
God,
true.
there's a whole lot of people here. But yeah, breathing is an amazing way to really get the parasympathetic nervous system engaged,
Right.
rather than the sympathetic one. So excellent
Exactly.
suggestion. Thank you. So let's move to our tech with a heartbeat. We've already done a bunch of tech with regard to AI, and this one's even partly related to that. But in 2023, Northwestern University did a study that found that, and this is all over the news right now, that while American IQ scores have risen for nearly a century, the recent cohorts have shown a significant reverse Flynn effect, they call it, which is scores are dropping in verbal reasoning, matrix reasoning, and computational logic. And a lot of people are basically declaring this, the education system's awful, that it's social media and the like. But the actual author of the study Dr. Zvorak, argues that spatial reasoning, so 3D visualization, though, has actually increased. And so it may well be that the tests that we're using are testing skills that were relevant in the past. And that what is happening now is we're basically needing to work in different ways in the current environment. And they also argue that a lot of the things like the verbal reasoning and the like, people are outsourcing some of that to AI. So you don't need to be as good anymore with regard to all of that. And anybody that is a teacher or a professor will know that grades on papers have increased across the board the last little while. And that's because everybody is using a writing assistant, an AI, to do that. I think really smart and forward-thinking educators, though, on the other hand, don't just use that as a criterion for assessing how well somebody knows something. I'm actually going to be doing a session tomorrow with the EMBA students that I have that are going to be presenting back to a colleague of mine and me. Are they still submitting a report? Yeah. But it's really their presentation and what they've learned and applying what they've learned that's going to come through the presentation. And so I think we just have different skills and the like. And so my advice with regard to all that you're seeing right now, all the dooms that everybody is sharing about this, is that it may well be that we're just changing the way that we need to operate in the world, and that we haven't changed the yardsticks. We haven't changed the measurement instruments and the like. So,
or we play too many video games.
Yes, but there's an argument that doing video game work is actually, this is one that I did studies on years ago, even early, or looking at things like TV, the effect that TV had, and then video games, but that there's research that actually shows the benefits of actually using video games for mental gymnastics and ability to concentrate and all those kind of things. The point is, you shouldn't only do it. All these things you need to do in moderation. And so I think there are benefits to a number of these things, but it's again, like the conversation we had regarding AI, society is changing, and we need to, I think, be cognizant of the changes that we're going through. And I think as parents, especially of younger kids, attend to what your kids are doing and be there, for them as they're going through this transformation, because they're entering a totally different world than we entered at their age. Okay, let's go to the last quick segment. We're running out of time here, and that is myth busting. And I just wanted to share a really quick one, which is that most people think that they really want more choices, give me more choices. But in actual fact, that's not the best way to be, either if you're trying to get somebody else to do something, or even you yourself doing it. And that is that the fewer the choices you provide, the more effective you can be. You can make decisions more quickly and the like. And there's a classic study, consumer study, that actually looked at, they showed a display of 24 jams and jars of jam. And that led to about 3% purchases. And then when they reduced the choices of the jams to just 6, the conversion rate exploded by 10 times, and their purchase rate went up to 30%. Right? So if you are selling things, or if you want to suggest, for example, that you're going out to dinner with friends, don't give them 10 choices of restaurants. Say, let's go to this one or this one. And you're more likely going to make the decision quickly and probably be happier at it as well. So that is my quick myth busting. And then over to Mandy for the last one.
Yeah, I just had one on high self-esteem, and we often say, well, if I was confident, or if everything was going well for me, everything would be fine and it would fix everything. But actually, that's not true. They say that confidence collapses under criticism if there's no strength behind that. And they say what really improves resilience is self-compassion, emotional regulation, and secure attachments. So we kind of need the beefy stuff behind the self-esteem and the confidence to actually kind of get it to work together. We need a bit of scaffolding around that. And I say high self-esteem without stability can morph into fragility or defensiveness. So you have to work on that a little bit harder, unfortunately. But then you can act as if with confidence, but also be working on the general core beliefs that you have about yourself. Just
Love
keep on.
it. All right. There's been a wide-ranging discussion on a variety of different topics, all kind of related to one another, as we discovered. And I think we have some very specific suggestions and recommendations for everyone. We really appreciate all of you that listen and watch what we put together here. We have a lot of fun putting it together. And we will talk to you all soon. Bye for now.